He drove her every day, opened her door, listened while she insulted him like he wasn't human. To her, he was just a driver, disposable, replaceable, silent. She laughed at him in front of others, corrected him when he was right, used his calm as proof he was weak. What she never realized, the quiet ones aren't empty. They're watching. And the day Elias Monroe stopped answering, "Yes, ma'am," the way she expected, everything she controlled began to slip. Watch till the end. The moment she looks at him differently is the moment she loses everything. Subscribe to this channel for more cinematic, high-impact stories where silence speaks louder than words. Elias Monroe had mastered the art of being overlooked, not because he lacked presence, not because he was small, timid, or uncertain, but because he never asked the world for permission to exist loudly. And in a society obsessed with noise, silence made people careless. Every morning, Elias arrived before dawn. The city wasn't awake yet. Streetlights still glowed, unsure whether they should turn off or keep watch. The air was cool, quiet, forgiving. This was the only time Elias truly belonged to the streets, before judgment woke up, before people decided who mattered. He parked precisely, not close enough to crowd the line, not far enough to look careless, perfectly centered. He stepped out, adjusted his plain shirt, and moved with routine confidence. He wiped the steering wheel, even though it was already clean, checked the mirrors, smoothed the dashboard with a cloth he kept folded in his pocket. No one asked him to do these things, but details mattered to him. They always had. To most people, Elias Monroe was just a driver. The kind of man you forget seconds after he leaves the room. The kind of man people talk around instead of to. The kind of presence that becomes part of the background, like furniture, like air conditioning, like silence. But to Elias, this role was not his identity. It was camouflage. The front door opened sharply. Elias straightened without thinking. Vanessa Carrington stepped out. Designer coat, perfect hair, sunglasses, even though the sun was barely awake. She moved like someone who expected the world to adjust its speed to match hers. She did not greet him. She never did. She slid into the back seat as if the door had opened on its own. Elias closed it gently, not because she demanded it, but because care was his default setting. "Why are we still here?" Vanessa snapped, eyes already on her phone. "I said 8 sharp." Elias checked the time, then spoke calmly. "It's 8, ma'am." She glanced at her watch, frowned, then scoffed. "Don't correct me. Just drive." "Yes, ma'am." That answer always came easily. Not defensive, not submissive, neutral. Vanessa liked control. She liked people who reacted, who flinched, apologized, over-explained. Elias did none of that. He complied without surrender, and that confused her more than rebellion ever could. As the car pulled away, Vanessa's voice filled the space. Complaints, criticism, stories about people she believed were beneath her. She laughed too loudly, performed confidence like it needed witnesses. Elias listened without absorbing. Eyes forward, hands steady, but something about him didn't match the role she'd written for him. It was his posture. He didn't slump the way defeated men did. Didn't shrink when spoken down to. Didn't move like someone carrying quiet shame. Even seated behind the wheel, there was a stillness to him, a grounded calm, as if he knew exactly who he was, regardless of where he sat. People who paid attention noticed. Most didn't. At stoplights, pedestrians glanced inside the car, saw Elias, and looked away. Valets nodded automatically. Security waved him through without curiosity. Invisible, by design. But there were moments, rare, unsettling moments, when that invisibility cracked. Once in a cafe, a stranger stared too long. "Excuse me," the man said, squinting. "Have we met before?" Elias smiled politely. "I don't think so." The man hesitated. "You just look familiar." Elias paid his bill and left before the question sharpened. He always left before curiosity became dangerous. By midday, Vanessa's patience had thinned. She watched Elias through the rearview mirror. "Do you ever talk?" "I speak when necessary." She laughed. "Drivers don't need opinions." "I agree." That answer irritated her more than resistance would have. At the office building, she exited without waiting. Elias followed at a respectful distance, carrying her bag, standing off to the side as meetings began. Executives greeted Vanessa warmly. Compliments flowed. Respect was performed loudly. No one acknowledged Elias, and he expected none. Still, if anyone had truly looked at him, they might have noticed something odd. The way expensive spaces didn't intimidate him. The way he observed rooms, not with curiosity, but recognition. The way luxury felt familiar, not impressive. Because Elias Monroe had once lived in rooms like these. Rooms filled with light, with cameras, with applause. But that life had been folded carefully and placed somewhere deep, untouched, but never erased. That evening, after dropping Vanessa off, Elias didn't drive home immediately. He parked on a quiet street as the city softened into dusk. Buildings glowed. Traffic slowed. He sat there, engine off, hands resting loosely on the wheel. Then he reached into his bag. A photograph. Old, creased, familiar. In it, a younger Elias stood beneath bright lights. Shoulders squared. Confidence visible. People watching him, not past him. He studied the image briefly. Not with longing. With acknowledgement. That was another life, he murmured. At home, his apartment was modest. Clean. Ordered. Nothing excessive. Nothing accidental. He removed his jacket, hung it neatly, and paused in front of the mirror. For a moment, he didn't see a driver. He saw a man who had stepped away from power and survived. Most people believed invisibility was a punishment. Elias knew better. Sometimes invisibility was protection. Sometimes it was preparation. He lay down without turning on the lights, listening to the city breathe beyond his window. Tomorrow would look the same. Same car, same woman, same silence. Or so everyone believed, because no one ever noticed the man they looked past, until the day he decided to be seen. And when that day came, the world would realize it had been standing next to someone far larger than it ever imagined. Elias Monroe understood power long before he understood silence. Power was never loud by accident. It announced itself on purpose. Vanessa Carrington wielded hers like a blunt instrument. The shift began subtly, a pause that lingered too long, a glance in the mirror that stayed a second past comfort, a smile that wasn't amusement, but calculation. Elias noticed. He always did. It started the morning she watched him clean the car longer than necessary. "You're very thorough," Vanessa said, tone sharp with mock approval. "Yes, ma'am." She circled him slowly, heels clicking against concrete. "Most drivers rush. You act like this car belongs to you." Elias didn't look up. "I treat what I'm responsible for with care." Something flickered behind her eyes. Not anger. Interest. That was when the idea formed. Vanessa was hosting her birthday celebration that weekend, an event she had spoken about for weeks. Exclusive, curated, expensive. The kind of night designed to remind people exactly where she stood in the social hierarchy. Power needed an audience, and Vanessa wanted entertainment. Later that afternoon, she met her friends for lunch, women cut from the same cloth of excess and entitlement. They laughed loudly, spoke carelessly, and measured worth by proximity to wealth. Elias waited nearby, invisible. "Your driver is always around," one of them said casually. "Doesn't he ever disappear?" Vanessa smiled slowly. "That's the thing. He never does." Another woman laughed. "Does he even talk?" Vanessa took a sip of her drink. "Only when necessary." They laughed again. Then Vanessa tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly. "You know what would be interesting?" The table leaned in. "What?" someone asked. She glanced toward Elias. "Inviting him to my birthday." Silence. Then laughter, sharp, delighted, cruel. "Your driver? That's wicked. He wouldn't know where to stand." Vanessa's smile widened. Exactly. The idea pleased her more the longer she sat with it. Watching him out of place. Watching him exposed. Watching him shrink. She liked the thought. That evening, back in the car, Vanessa spoke casually, as if announcing the weather. "My birthday is this weekend," she said. "Yes, ma'am. I'm inviting you." Elias met her eyes in the mirror, just briefly. "Thank you, ma'am." That wasn't the response she expected. No hesitation. No confusion. No discomfort. She frowned. "You will come, right?" "Yes, ma'am." Her smile tightened. You'll dress properly, she added. I don't want you embarrassing me. I understand. The calm in his voice unsettled her. This was supposed to be a joke. Elias didn't ask questions, didn't clarify details, didn't protest. That night, alone in his apartment, Elias stood by the window longer than usual. He understood the invitation for what it was. Not kindness, not inclusion. A setup most people would have declined. Most people would have feared humiliation. Elias did neither. Instead, he opened a drawer beneath his bed. Inside was a suit. Dark, tailored, immaculate, untouched for years. He ran his fingers along the fabric, memories surfacing, not painfully but vividly. Lights, cameras, applause, a version of himself the world had forgotten. Not yet, he whispered. The next few days were deliberate. Vanessa reminded him twice. Don't forget. Don't be late. Each reminder carried expectation, anticipation of spectacle. Her friends were already excited. This will be hilarious. I want to see his face. Imagine him trying to fit in. Elias overheard none of it, but he sensed it. On the day of the event, Vanessa gave final instructions. You'll drop me off early, she said. Come later. I don't want people seeing you too soon. Yes, ma'am. As she exited the car, she added, and remember, this is not your world. Elias watched her walk away. Confident, certain. That certainty amused him. Because Vanessa believed the night was about control. She believed she had chosen the stage. What she didn't know was this. Elias had already stood under brighter lights than she could imagine. And humiliation only worked on people who didn't know their own worth. As the sun dipped and the city dressed itself in gold and shadow, Elias prepared. Not nervously, intentionally. He didn't rush, didn't rehearse, didn't second-guess. Because this night wasn't about proving anything. It was about allowing truth to surface without announcement. Vanessa wanted entertainment. She had no idea she was about to become the audience. And for the first time since Elias Monroe chose silence over spectacle, someone was about to remember him. The party was already alive when Elias Monroe arrived. Music rolled through the building in slow, confident waves. Laughter spilled from every corner. Glasses clinked. Cameras flashed. The kind of event where people didn't just attend, they performed. Valets rushed back and forth. Luxury cars lined the entrance like trophies. Names were checked. Smiles were measured. Inside, Vanessa Carrington stood at the center of it all. She wore satisfaction like perfume. Guests leaned toward her. Compliments flowed freely. Phones lifted for pictures. Every detail of the night had been curated to reinforce a single message. She mattered. Her friends hovered close, watching the entrance. Has he arrived yet? One of them whispered. Vanessa smirked. Not yet. She wanted anticipation. She wanted the moment to land. She wanted eyes. Then the doors opened. At first, no one reacted. A man stepped inside quietly. No announcement. No hesitation. No rush. Just presence. Elias Monroe entered the room like someone who knew exactly where he was. The suit fit him perfectly. Sharp lines, clean silhouette, effortless confidence. Not flashy, not loud, controlled. He didn't scan the room nervously. He didn't search for approval. He walked forward calmly, shoulders relaxed, spine straight, gaze steady. Whispers began near the door. Who's that? He looks familiar. Is he someone important? Phones lifted instinctively. Vanessa's smile faltered. She leaned forward slightly, squinting. That's not, she began. Then recognition struck. Her breath caught. That's him, someone beside her whispered. Your driver. Vanessa froze. No, this wasn't how he was supposed to look. This wasn't how he was supposed to move. Elias continued walking. People stepped aside without realizing why. A few smiled at him, polite, curious, impressed. One man nodded in acknowledgement. A woman laughed softly as he passed, eyes lingering longer than necessary. Vanessa's chest tightened. This wasn't a joke anymore. When Elias reached the center of the room, he stopped. Not awkwardly, intentionally. He looked around, not with awe, not with fear, but with recognition. As if he had been here before. As if rooms like this had once known his name. Vanessa stood abruptly. Her friends grabbed her arm. Vanessa, he looks. Quiet, she hissed. Elias turned toward her. Their eyes met. The room felt smaller. For a brief second, the years collapsed, the insults, the assumptions, the laughter behind closed doors. Elias spoke calmly. "Good evening, ma'am." The word landed differently now. Not submission. Recognition. Silence followed. Then clapping. Slow at first. Uncertain. Building. Not because he demanded it. Because presence demands acknowledgement. Vanessa felt something unfamiliar crawl up her spine. Loss of control. She forced a laugh, too loud. "Well," she said, "look who decided to clean up." Elias smiled politely. "Happy birthday, ma'am." Someone nearby whispered, "He's handsome." Another murmured, "Who is he?" Vanessa's friends shifted uncomfortably. "This was supposed to be funny," one of them muttered. Vanessa stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Don't overdo it." "I'm not," Elias replied evenly. That calm, untouchable, unbothered, unnerved her more than defiance ever could. A man approached Elias, extending a hand. "I don't believe we've met." "Elias Monroe." "Pleasure," the man said, clearly impressed. "You carry yourself well." "Thank you." Vanessa watched conversations bloom around him, watched attention drift, watched control slip. This night had been designed to spotlight her. Instead, the room had chosen someone else. She had invited him to be humiliated. Instead, he had arrived undeniable. And for the first time, Vanessa Carrington understood something too late. You should never invite someone to a stage if you don't know what they're capable of commanding. Elias didn't stay long. He didn't need to. He had already shifted the balance. As he stepped away from the center, whispers followed him. Not mockery, but curiosity. Vanessa stood frozen, applause fading, smile cracking. The joke had died, and something else had begun. Because the man everyone overlooked had just reminded the room. Silence, when chosen, is never weakness. It is restraint. And restraint, once released, changes everything. The party ended, but the damage didn't. Music faded. Guests filtered out slowly, still talking, still replaying the moment Elias Monroe had walked in and changed the temperature of the room. Names were exchanged. Phones buzzed. Photos circulated quietly, already detached from their original context. Vanessa Carrington smiled until the last guest left. Then she stopped. The silence inside her house felt heavier than noise ever had. She walked through the living room slowly, heels clicking too loudly against marble floors. Decorations still shimmered. Glasses sat half full. The air smelled like celebration, but something sour lingered beneath it. Control had slipped, and Vanessa felt it. She reached for her phone. No new compliments. No excited messages. Just a few short texts. "Who was that guy? Didn't know your driver was like that. Interesting night. Interesting." The word burned. She threw the phone onto the couch and paced. The image replayed again and again. Elias, standing calm, unbothered, composed while attention bent toward him like gravity. That wasn't how power worked. Not her power. She stopped walking. "Elias," she called sharply. No answer. Her jaw tightened. She moved toward the back corridor where staff rooms were located. The house was too quiet now. The kind of quiet that forced thoughts to speak louder. She found him in the garage. Elias was removing his jacket carefully, folding it the way he folded everything, with intention. He hadn't rushed. He hadn't looked shaken. He hadn't even looked triumphant. That bothered her most. "You enjoyed yourself," Vanessa said. Elias turned calmly. "I thank you for the invitation." "Don't play polite now," she snapped. "You knew exactly what you were doing." "I attended a party," he replied. As invited, Vanessa stepped closer. "You embarrass me." Elias met her eyes. Steady, unflinching. "I didn't speak badly of you." "That's not the point," she said sharply. "You changed the room." He paused for a fraction of a second, then nodded. "People noticed." Her breath caught. Not denial, not apology, just truth. "You are my driver," she said, forcing the words out like a reminder. "You don't walk into rooms like that." Elias responded calmly. "I walked in the way I always walk." That answer landed hard. Vanessa laughed once, sharp, brittle. "You think one night changes anything?" "No," Elias said, "but it reveals things." She stared at him, searching for cracks. For arrogance. For insecurity. She found none. You should remember your place, she said quietly. I know my place, Elias replied. I always have. Something in his tone shifted. Not louder, not aggressive, but anchored. Vanessa felt it, and she didn't like it. She turned away abruptly. You're dismissed for the night. Yes, ma'am. But this time, the word didn't soothe her. It echoed. Later that night, Vanessa lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. A talent scout was asking about him. Apparently, he used a model. She sat up. Model? No, that wasn't possible. She had known Elias for years. She would have known. Unless she never looked. The thought unsettled her. Across the city, Elias sat alone in his apartment. Jacket hung neatly. Shoes aligned. Light off. He replayed the night. Not with pride, not with revenge, but with clarity. The moment Vanessa realized she didn't control the narrative. The moment the room chose for itself. He hadn't planned to stay long. He hadn't needed to. Sometimes, exposure required only presence. His phone buzzed softly. A new message. This is Marcus Hale. I represent talent. We should talk. Elias stared at the screen. He didn't reply immediately. He set the phone down and stood by the window, watching the city lights blink in quiet rhythm. The past had a way of resurfacing, not to haunt, but to test readiness. Back in Vanessa's house, she poured herself a drink she didn't want. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, controlled, polished, shaken. She whispered to herself, I made him. But the words sounded hollow, because deep down, Vanessa Carrington felt something she had never allowed herself to feel before. She hadn't elevated Elias. She had underestimated him, and now the balance had shifted. She just didn't know yet how much it was going to cost her. The morning after the party, the city moved like nothing had happened. Traffic flowed. Coffee shops opened. Meetings began. But for Elias Monroe, the air felt different. He arrived early as always. Earlier, even. The garage lights hummed softly as he wiped down the car with deliberate calm. His movements were steady, practiced, but his mind was awake in a way it hadn't been in years. His phone rested in his jacket pocket. Silent. He hadn't replied to the message. Not yet. Vanessa Carrington came down later than usual. She wore sunglasses indoors. That alone told him something. Drive, she said flatly, sliding into the back seat. No insults. No commentary. No phone call theatrics. Just tension. Elias pulled out smoothly, eyes forward. The silence stretched. Vanessa broke it first. So, she said casually, too casually, you had an interesting night. Yes, ma'am. She tapped her nails against the door. People have been asking questions. I imagine they would. Her jaw tightened. You enjoy attention now? She asked. Elias didn't answer immediately. No, he said finally. I'm comfortable with visibility. That was not the response she wanted. Vanessa leaned forward slightly. Be careful. Visibility attracts expectations. Elias nodded. I'm familiar with them. She laughed once dry. Are you? Another silence. Then she said it. I heard someone approach you. Elias didn't look back. Yes. Her sunglasses turned slightly in the reflection. And nothing yet. That was technically true. Vanessa leaned back, satisfied for now. Good, she thought. The drive ended. She exited the car without another word. But the damage was already moving beneath the surface. By midday, Elias' phone buzzed again. A second message. I know you're cautious, but timing matters. This window won't stay open. He sat alone in the car, engine off, staring at the dashboard. He remembered another time, another room, another offer, another moment when the future had asked if he was ready. Back then, he had said no, not because he lacked talent, but because life had demanded sacrifice. He had walked away quietly, chose stability, chose anonymity, chose survival, and it had cost him everything else. Now, the question had returned. Not louder, clearer. That evening, Vanessa hosted a small business dinner. Fewer guests, controlled environment, strategic smiles. Elias stood nearby, as usual, but the dynamic had shifted. People noticed him now, not openly, not boldly, but subtly. Eyes lingered, greetings softened. One man nodded at him with recognition. Vanessa noticed every single one. She interrupted a conversation to pull Elias aside. After tonight, she said, voice low, I need loyalty. Elias met her gaze. You've always had professionalism. That's not what I asked, she snapped quietly. I need to know you're not planning something. He paused. Just long enough. I planned carefully, he said. That was all. The dinner ended early. Vanessa dismissed him sharply. Elias drove home in silence. Inside his apartment, the air felt tight. He removed his jacket, hung it neatly, and sat on the edge of his bed. Then he picked up the phone. Typed. I'm listening. The response came almost immediately. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., downtown. Simple conversation. Elias exhaled slowly. The door had opened, and once opened, it could never be closed the same way again. The next morning, Vanessa was already waiting when he arrived. You're late, she said. I'm on time, Elias replied calmly. She stared at him, suspicious. You look different. I slept well. She didn't like that. As they drove, her phone rang. She answered sharply, then her tone shifted. Yes. I see. No, I wasn't aware. She glanced at Elias through the mirror. Interesting. She ended the call. Silence returned, thicker now. What was that? She asked suddenly. A call, Elias said evenly. She laughed nervously. You're becoming clever. I've always been observant. That was when Vanessa understood something dangerous. Elias wasn't changing. He was revealing. She dropped him off and walked away without another word. At 9:58 a.m., Elias stood outside a modern glass building. Clean lines, quiet confidence, no extravagance. He entered. A woman met him with a calm smile. Elias Monroe? Yes. I'm Dana. They shook hands. She studied him, not critically but professionally. You carry yourself like someone who's done this before, she said. I have. Then you know what this means. Elias nodded. Inside the meeting room, the conversation was simple, direct. No flattery, no promises, just reality. We don't need you to perform, Dana said. We need you to arrive as you are. That sentence landed hard. Elias felt something shift internally. Not excitement, alignment. This won't coexist with your current job, she added gently. You'll have to choose. He already knew. Across the city, Vanessa sat in her office, unsettled. Something felt wrong. She checked her phone. No messages. No control. For the first time in years, she wasn't ahead of the situation. She whispered to herself, he wouldn't dare. But deep down, she felt it. The invisible man had reached the edge of invisibility, and he wasn't stepping back. By nightfall, Elias stood again in his apartment, looking at his reflection. Not searching, deciding. Tomorrow, he would answer. And when he did, nothing, absolutely nothing, would remain the same. Elias Monroe did not sleep much that night. Not because of fear, but because clarity has weight, and once it settles, the body stays alert. Morning came quietly. The city stretched awake. Elias moved through his routine with precision. Shower, clean shirt, polished shoes. Nothing dramatic. Nothing rushed. He dressed like a man who knew where he was going, even if no one else did. When he arrived at Vanessa Carrington's house, the gates opened automatically. Familiar. Predictable. The car waited exactly where it always had. But today, something was different. Not in the environment. In him. Vanessa came out late again. Her stride was sharp. Her expression controlled. She entered the car without looking at him. Drive, she said. Elias obeyed. The silence between them felt deliberate now, like both were measuring something invisible. Halfway through the drive, Vanessa spoke. You've been distracted, she said. I've been focused, Elias replied. She scoffed. Same thing, different excuse. He didn't respond. They reached her office building. She didn't exit immediately. Instead, she leaned forward, voice low. I don't like surprises, she said. And I don't like disloyalty. Elias met her eyes in the mirror. Neither do I. That answer unsettled her. She stepped out of the car and walked inside without another word. Elias remained seated for a moment after she disappeared through the doors. Then he reached into his jacket pocket. Folded paper. Prepared. Final. Later that afternoon, Vanessa summoned him. Not casually. Formally. Her assistant delivered the message with a stiff smile. She wants to see you. Now. Elias followed. Vanessa's office was immaculate. Glass walls, curated art, a desk positioned to elevate authority. She stood behind it, arms crossed. You've been making moves, she said. I've been responding to opportunities, Elias replied. She laughed sharply. Opportunities don't knock on drivers. They knock on people, he said calmly. Some choose not to answer. That was when Vanessa's composure cracked. You think you're above this now? She snapped. Above me? Elias stepped forward and placed a folded paper on her desk. No, he said. I'm stepping out. She stared at it. Didn't touch it. What is this? She demanded. My resignation. The word landed heavy. Vanessa blinked. You don't get to decide that. I already have. She picked up the paper now, scanning it quickly. This is ridiculous, she said. You're emotional. That party went to your head. It clarified things, Elias replied. Her voice rose. You're nothing without this job. He didn't react. You think someone's going to save you? She continued. Use you up and throw you away? Elias met her gaze. I've already been used, he said quietly. And I survived it. Silence followed. Real silence. Vanessa laughed again, but there was panic underneath it now. You won't last, she said. You'll come back. Elias shook his head once. No, he said. I won't. She slammed the paper down. You're making a mistake. I'm making a choice. That distinction infuriated her. You're a driver, she said sharply. That's all you've ever been. Elias straightened, not aggressively, but completely. I was quiet, he said. That doesn't mean I was small. The room felt suddenly smaller. Vanessa stared at him like she was seeing him for the first time and hating the clarity. Get out, she said. Yes, ma'am. But the word had changed. It was no longer submission. It was closure. Elias left the office calmly. No speech. No argument. No satisfaction. Just finality. That evening, he packed lightly. He didn't need much. The folded photograph went back into his bag, not as a reminder, but as evidence. The next morning, Elias walked into a building he had once avoided. Bright lights. Open floor. Quiet anticipation. The audition room. Dana was there. You decided, she said. Yes, Elias replied. She nodded. Good. Because timing matters. He stepped forward when called. No nerves. No performance. Just presence. When he finished, the room stayed silent for a second too long. Then someone said quietly, That's it. Dana smiled. Welcome back. Across the city, Vanessa Carrington sat alone at her desk. The driver hadn't arrived. She checked the time. Then her phone. Nothing. For the first time in years, she had to open her own car door. The realization hit her harder than she expected. Elias Monroe was gone, and with him went the illusion that she had ever owned more than his silence. Meanwhile, Elias stepped out into daylight, the city unfolding in front of him. Not familiar, not intimidating. Open. He inhaled deeply. This wasn't revenge. This was release. And whatever came next would not require permission. Elias Monroe did not announce his return. He didn't post. He didn't explain. He didn't correct anyone. He simply showed up. The first shoot was quiet. A controlled space. White walls. Clean lighting. Professionals who spoke in low voices and watched closely. Elias followed instructions with the ease of someone who remembered more than he needed to relearn. Walk to the mark. Turn. Hold. He did. Not stiff. Not forced. Not eager. Just present. The room noticed immediately. Not because he tried. Because he didn't. The photographer lowered his camera slowly. You're not chasing the lens, he said. You let it come to you. Elias nodded once. That's how it used to be. By the end of the session, no one questioned why he was there. They only questioned how he had been gone so long. Outside, the city moved as usual. Inside the industry, something stirred. A single image was shared privately. Then another. Then one leaked, without a caption. No name. No story. Just a face that made people stop scrolling. Questions followed. Who is this? Why does he look familiar? Where did he come from? Elias didn't read the comments. He was too busy working. Across the city, Vanessa Carrington felt the shift before she understood it. It started with silence. Her phone didn't ring the way it used to. Invitations slowed. Meetings were rescheduled indefinitely. Compliments became polite instead of eager. Then came a looks, lingering, assessing, different. She overheard it at a networking event. That's the woman who mocked that model, right? No, he used to be her driver. While Vanessa laughed it off in public. But later, alone, she searched and found him. The image filled her screen. Elias, standing under studio lights. Calm, composed, unmistakable. Her throat tightened. That's not possible, she whispered. But it was. Meanwhile, Elias attended his first public event. Not as staff, not as background, as invited. He wore a simple suit, clean lines, nothing loud. He entered without scanning the room, without bracing. People noticed anyway. Heads turned. Whispers followed. Phones lifted. Someone approached him with a smile. You're Elias, right? Yes. Welcome. Just that. Welcome. Across the room, conversations adjusted. People repositioned themselves subtly, instinctively gravitating toward him. Not aggressively. Naturally. Attention follows certainty. Elias spoke sparingly. When he did, people listened. Not because he demanded it, but because he didn't waste it. Someone laughed at something he said. Another leaned closer. A third introduced him to someone else. The circle grew without effort. Across town, Vanessa stood in her living room staring at the same image on her phone. She replayed the party. The moment she lost the room. The way people leaned toward him without being asked. She felt something unfamiliar tighten in her chest. Regret? No. Recognition. She had misjudged the power dynamic. Completely. The industry moved quickly. A feature followed. Then a campaign. Then a runway appearance announced quietly, strategically. Elias didn't celebrate. He prepared. Backstage, surrounded by movement and noise, he stood alone with his eyes closed. A hand touched his shoulder. You ready? Someone asked. He opened his eyes. I never stopped being. The music hit. Lights flared. He stepped forward. Not rushing. Not hesitating. The walk was controlled. Balanced. Intentional. The audience leaned in. This wasn't flash. This was authority. Cameras followed him instinctively. Applause came before he reached the end. In the audience, someone whispered, That's him. Across the city, Vanessa watched the show on her laptop. She sat frozen. There was no mistaking it now. Elias Monroe was no longer invisible. And worse, he was undeniable. Messages began coming in. Didn't you used to work with him? Crazy turnaround. You must be proud. Proud. The word tasted bitter. She closed the laptop. For the first time in years, the narrative wasn't hers to manage. Later that night, Elias stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The noise below felt distant. His phone buzzed. A message. Vanessa Carrington wants to meet. He stared at it for a long moment. Not angry. Not amused. Just aware. The past was asking for acknowledgement. But Elias had learned something important. Being seen doesn't mean being available. He didn't reply. Inside, the industry kept moving. Inside Vanessa's world, things began to fracture. And both of them understood the same truth now. The room had changed sides, and there was no going back. Vanessa Carrington did not fall all at once. She unraveled in pieces. It started with absences. Meetings that used to fill her calendar vanished without explanation. Calls went unanswered longer than usual. Assistants stopped hovering. The energy around her, once sharp and obedient, softened into distance. People were still polite. But politeness is not loyalty. She noticed it first in the elevator. No one rushed to press her floor. No forced smiles. No eager small talk. Just silence. At first, she told herself it was temporary. Markets shifted. Attention moved. That was normal. But then came a second wave. A client canceled outright. Another requested a pause. A third asked to renegotiate terms she would have once dismissed without discussion. Vanessa sat at her desk, staring at the email, fingers motionless above the keyboard. We decided to explore other directions. Other directions. She closed her laptop slowly. The office felt larger than it used to. Empty space where certainty once lived. At lunch, she overheard her name. Not spoken loudly. Not spoken kindly. She mocked him. Did you see the video? She didn't know who she was talking to. Vanessa didn't turn around. She didn't have to. The words landed anyway. That evening, she sat alone at home, glass untouched in her hand, watching a muted television screen replay footage she didn't need sound to understand. Elias. Walking. Standing. Being welcomed. Not elevated by effort, but by alignment. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "When did this happen?" she whispered. The answer came quickly. It didn't. It had always been there. She just never looked closely enough. Across the city, Elias experienced something different. Stillness. Not the old kind, the silence of erasure, but the calm that follows movement. He sat in a quiet room with neutral walls, reviewing contracts he hadn't imagined touching again. The language was familiar. The stakes clearer now. Dana sat across from him. "You don't seem surprised," she said. "I expected work," Elias replied. "Not noise." She smiled faintly. "Noise is coming. I can manage it. I believe that." She slid another document toward him. "This one's optional." Elias scanned it briefly. "Public appearances. Interviews. Visibility." He set aside. "Not yet." Dana nodded. "Take your time." Time. For the first time in years, it belonged to him. Meanwhile, Vanessa's world kept narrowing. At a charity event she once headlined, she now stood on the periphery. Conversations drifted away from her before they began. Laughter softened when she approached. She overheard it again. He never said anything about her. That's the worst part. He didn't need to. That night, she searched for him again. Not online. In memory. Every interaction. Every comment. Every assumption. She remembered how he stood. How he listened. How he never defended himself. She mistook restraint for weakness. Now, she recognized it for what it had been. Control. The phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number. She hesitated, then answered. "Yes." "Vanessa Carrington?" the voice asked. "Yes. This is a producer. We're working on a profile piece. There's some interest in your former employee." Her throat tightened. "Former?" "Yes. Elias Monroe." The name sounded heavier now. "We wanted your comment." She closed her eyes. "No comment," she said quietly. The line went dead. Later, she stood by her window, city lights flickering below. The same view she once believed she owned. She didn't. No one did. Across town, Elias stood in a similar place. Balcony. City. Lights. But his posture was different. Grounded. He wasn't watching the city anymore. He was choosing how to move through it. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Vanessa. "We need to talk." He stared at it for a long moment. This time he responded. "Tomorrow. Public place. Simple. Contained. Final." Vanessa read the reply twice. Public place. She swallowed. The next day, she arrived early. She chose a cafe where people came and went without attention. Neutral ground. No hierarchy. Elias arrived exactly on time. No dramatic entrance. No hesitation. He sat across from her calmly. "Thank you for coming," she said. "You asked," he replied. She folded her hands tightly. "I didn't know." He nodded. "I know." She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time without the lens of ownership. "I treated you unfairly," she said quietly. Elias didn't interrupt. "I thought silence meant consent," she continued. "I thought control meant superiority." He listened. When she finished, he spoke gently. "You didn't break me," he said. "You revealed something." Her eyes flickered. "What?" "Why would no longer accept." She exhaled shakily. "I lost everything," she said. Elias shook his head slightly. "No, you lost authority. There's a difference." She nodded, absorbing the weight of that. "I'm sorry," she said. He met her gaze. "I believe you." She looked relieved. Then he stood. "This doesn't continue," he said. "But it does end." She nodded. As he walked away, Vanessa remained seated, watching people pass who no longer noticed her. And for the first time, she understood. Power doesn't leave loudly. It leaves when it's no longer believed. And once gone, it doesn't ask permission to stay. The world did not explode when Elias Monroe stepped fully into the light. It adjusted. Slowly. Reluctantly. Then completely. There were no dramatic announcements. No public victory speeches. No interviews exposing anyone's past. Elias did not need to correct the narrative. Time did it for him. Within weeks, his presence became familiar again, but in a different register. His name appeared in places where silence once followed him. People who had never noticed his absence now discussed his arrival. Not because he demanded it, because he belonged there. Elias kept his routine simple. He still woke early, still arrived on time, still prepared quietly. The difference was not in his habits. It was in how the world responded to them. Rooms shifted when he entered, not from intimidation, but recognition. Conversations paused, then resumed with intention. People listened when he spoke, not because of who he stood beside, but because of how he stood alone. He did not rush into prominence. He allowed it to meet him. Dana watched this carefully. "You don't seem interested in proving anything," she said one afternoon as they reviewed schedules. "I already proved what mattered," Elias replied. "And what was that? That I didn't disappear when I was ignored." She nodded. "That's rare." Across the city, Vanessa Carrington learned what absence truly felt like. Her days grew quieter. Not peaceful, empty. She still owned her apartment, still wore tailored clothes, still had resources. But influence is not stored in closets or accounts. It lives in perception. And hers had shifted. Invitations slowed. Introductions shortened. Conversations ended sooner than they began. At one event, a woman smiled politely and said, "Oh, you're the one who used to work with Elias." Used to. The word landed heavier than any insult. Vanessa excused herself early that night and walked home alone, heels clicking against pavement that no longer felt like it belonged to her. For the first time, she allowed herself to sit with the truth she had avoided. She never saw Elias because she never tried. She mistook restraint for insignificance, silence for emptiness, control for power, and she had been wrong on all counts. Meanwhile, Elias stood in front of a mirror in a fitting room, adjusting the collar of a jacket that fit him without resistance. A stylist stepped back. "You don't need help," she said. "I know," Elias replied calmly. The mirror reflected a man unchanged by recognition. Same posture, same eyes, same quiet certainty. What had changed was permission. He had stopped asking for it. That evening, he walked through the city unrecognized by most and acknowledged by the few who mattered. A nod here, a handshake there, respect exchanged without ceremony. At a quiet restaurant, he sat alone, reviewing notes for a project he had chosen carefully. Not because it paid the most, not because it came with attention, but because it aligned. A message appeared on his phone. Unknown number. "This is Vanessa." He didn't open it immediately. He finished his meal, paid, stood. Then he read it. "I wanted to thank you for not turning me into the villain." Elias considered his reply, then typed, "I didn't need one." He placed the phone face down and left. Weeks later, a feature aired. Not sensational, not accusatory, measured. It spoke about quiet endurance, about dignity without applause, about the difference between visibility and value. Elias watched none of it. He was too busy living the part that came after survival. On a balcony overlooking the city, he stood with a glass of water, lights stretching endlessly beneath him. The same city that once passed him by, the same streets where he had been invisible. Nothing about them had changed. He had, not by becoming louder, not by becoming crueler, not by becoming someone else, but by refusing to disappear. Somewhere below, people moved through their lives unaware that the man above them had once been dismissed as insignificant. And that was fine. Elias had learned something important. Not everyone who overlooks you deserves access to who you become. The night air cooled. He breathed it in fully. Tomorrow would bring more attention, more opportunity, more choice. But tonight was enough, because the ending was not applause. It was alignment. The man who had been underestimated did not rise to prove them wrong. He rose because he had always been ready, and the world, finally, caught up. The most dangerous thing he ever did wasn't proving them wrong. It was becoming everything they never believed he could be, and walking away without needing their approval.